to navigate a company and deploy machine learning. So I call this, let's see if I can get this, the 7 deadly sins. But it's meant to be a super positive thing, and I just wanted to compliment everybody here. Now, you've probably heard it a lot over the course of the conference, but this is just an incredibly exciting time for people that are in our industry, because we get to ask better questions and we get to operationalize our thoughts about how to deconstruct a problem and answer problems for customers at scale. And so at Starbucks, we have 40 million customers that are active. We get a mountain of data flowing in, and we understand that we have a promise to them that we're supposed to make them feel comfortable, honored, and that Starbucks is a third place for them. And it's especially true in a world where stores have basically disappeared as a place for people to congregate. And so we have a lot of emphasis now on the digital interactions and the digital experiences, and that's where DeepBrew comes to play. Now, 2 years ago, we didn't have anything like DeepBrew, but now we are delivering over 1 billion recommendations per year. That has put DeepBrew at the front lines of Starbucks. Now, along the way, we got some real boosts. And that is, we put everything into a Microsoft Azure. Oh, sorry, my slides are a little bit ahead of me here. Where we found that we needed a sort of a high-level support for what we were doing. And the industry is very enthusiastic about this. So we were mentioned by Satya Nadella at Microsoft Build. Our CEO gives us a lot of air cover and support, which is really important for innovation because this is a tough ask. Machine learning is a tough ask because you're actually being a disruptive force. You're saying to somebody whose job it is to optimize an experience that a machine might be able to do some of the things that they do reasonably well. So you're actually causing a little bit of a culture shift, and you're challenging some of the current assumptions of a business, which makes it a difficult proposition in many ways. So while Starbucks might not have wanted to move as quickly into this space as we all would dream, the industry did start to change. McDonald's purchased Dynamic Yield, a company that does machine learning, for $300 million. And it got the attention of our C-suite. Why is McDonald's investing an incredible amount of money? To us, it looked like just a massive amount of money in something that we had heard of and we thought was important, but we didn't know was going to change the world. And so into this dynamic of how do we create a great customer experience, the world is changing, entered this concept called DeepBrew, where DeepBrew is a platform that is designed to talk to all of Starbucks' incredible data, put it into our data lake, and then have a compute layer where machine learning models could live. And then we have all these great interactions with customers. We have digital drive-throughs, we have the mobile app, we have web interfaces, we talk to people via social media. The idea here was, let's operationalize this. Now, DeepBrew, as we started to build it, we came to a sort of a very stunning realization. And that is that while you can have great data and you can have extremely smart data scientists, if you build that first piece of code that answers a question, and some of the things that you can build in a very short amount of time is stunning. If you build that code and you get buy-in on it, you're only a small percentage of the way on this path to production. You need to understand all of these components. So DeepBrew was the first platform that collected all of these components and put it into one ostensibly easy to use platform where these models could be deployed. And so building the platform became more important than building that first model, because we wanted to deploy hundreds of models. We wanted to be able to solve many customer problems, but there are real challenges across the board, and it's not easy to do in silos. So seven deadly sins, number one, is misunderstanding. It's conflating the genius that is at all of our fingertips. You know, what was it, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, you know, people started to realize that incredible things were possible with machine learning. Folks like Amazon started to come out with SageMaker. The entire industry started to build tools and processes that were able to unleash like really cool machine learning models that could solve problems. But we realized that this was a challenge that was going to be different for us, where we were making a promise that these solutions had to be right all the time. They had to be up 99.9% of the time, and they needed to serve 40 million people reliably. So it became my job and a small team's job to build a platform that would make it so we could have the right approach and many models inside of Starbucks. So DeepBrew platform. Inside the platform, we started to make some claims. Now the platform features a great deal of reinforcement learning. So what we were doing is we were replacing pieces of the digital screen real estate that we have in 30,000 stores in the United States for 40 million customers for this wonderful mobile app. We started to make claims that the machine learning model could make recommendations. And we got a lot of pushback. What is it that you guys are going to solve that's different from how we're solving it or replacing the screen real estate? How do we know that that's going to do good things? But what people were more interested in was, how do we make sure that there's never going to be any harm done? People have a deep fear of machine learning models, like, hey, can it drift? Can it make improper recommendations? What happens when the machine starts to make up its own mind on things? And I can't even tell you, like, it's a reality of our world is that these machine learning models can be black box, and it might be hard for you to explain it to anybody under any circumstances. People just have an innate opinion about machine learning that you might not be able to overcome. And so we took a very deliberate approach on two fronts. The first was we were going to make a claim that we were never going to have a security breach. So we all put our hats into this ring of, like, security is going to become more important than the model. But we also had a set of reports, dashboards that said, here's the value of the solution that we have in place absent machine learning. And here's how we're going to monitor the KPIs to make sure that we're never making a mistake. So we were able to address with data this deep concern that said, we're going to have transparency in these outcomes. And so as we think about, like, these 7 deadly sins, the idea is to come up with, like, a little bit of a scorecard, like how healthy are you? How realistic is it for you to take an idea from just the concept in somebody's head to production? So in this grading system, we found that of all the models that wanted to come to life inside of Starbucks, if we couldn't answer that fundamental question of, we're not going to do any harm, and we ever use the word, you just have to trust us, it was going to be a very hard road for us to go down. And so we wanted to make sure that we always had a KPI dashboard that was able to show the truth. And it was a critical success factor for us. We did find that there was another serious issue, and that is people behind the scenes, as they looked at these machine learning models, were asking a very fundamental question. Here's the world, it's changing in many ways. Machines are taking over in factories, and they're moving into this world of knowledge. So we had to have high-level leadership support that said, if this machine learning model is successful, it's going to uplift the experience for the people that are doing that current work. So if we have a model that's going to work in the store, the narrative is never, we're going to replace jobs in the store, reduce costs in the store. It's that we're going to make it so the barista's life is easier, so they can spend more time making people feel welcome and have a great experience, and we're keeping our brand promise to our customers. So this concept of high-level air support and getting in front of that conversation was critical for us. So if you don't address that question head on, you will run into resistance, and this resistance shows up in a number of ways that can bog down your project. So again, we score that out. Now, the reality of machine learning is that when you create a system that is able to communicate to the edge, and you're in a PaaS solution, you're actually punching a hole in your security perimeter. And this world is changing all the time as hackers come up with new solutions, new ways to penetrate security, and we see other companies having their security perimeter penetrated, and we see what happens to their stock prices. We had to have somebody on the team that understood security and made it their job, and we call it "You Bet Your Life." Anytime we release, anytime we do anything new, we have to go to that security team and make sure that they will bet their life that we're not going to have a security problem. So as you grade out your system and as you think about what your team is, your team composition, this is actually mission critical. The other part of that is, and now this is meant to be really good news. Because at the end of this, if you get through all these, you navigate all these waters, you can produce solutions that are amazing, and you can have very interesting conversations about better questions, about next level concepts, about making a brain smarter. You can actually build the intelligence of brain. But if you spend time there without paying attention to operations, you will be classified as sort of almost like a toy. And so we did have this experience where people would say, it's wonderful that you have the data. It's wonderful that you can produce the solution. And it's wonderful that you can create inputs and outputs. But when you're serving 40 million people a year, you're serving 1 billion recommendations per year, you better have somebody and a team ethos that is really all about operations. So as we sequenced out what we were thinking about, the machine learning model went from, boy, this is cool, and it's number one, to, well, security's number one. Operations around this, building reliable software and a reliable user experience is number two. The machine learning model becomes a smaller piece of this. That landscape that we showed at the start has it. People, they can exhale, they can stop asking questions if they know the customer experience is going to be great. And data through operations is critical on that front. Now, this one's may apply to your company, it may not. But Starbucks is a highly matrixed organization where we have at any time hundreds of initiatives that are extremely important. And we will tend to put our top resources on whatever project is the highest priority. This is the exact opposite of what is required in my experience to build a successful machine learning solution and a successful machine learning team. And that is, you need to take Agile very seriously. Now, like Amazon, we'll talk about, it's how small can this team be to accomplish your goals? How can people get into such a great relationship with each other that they know how to finish each other's sentences? So if you are trying to build a machine learning system and you're in a number of silos, you'll probably find yourself blocked pretty quickly by other people not fully understanding that machine learning has its own sets of needs. And so you really do want to have a dedicated team that builds up a cadence of great releases, great practices, and knowing what the key problems are, where it's security, operations, and machine learning. Now, 7 deadly sin number 7 is a critical one. And it revolves around having enough innovation time in your budget that you can actually prove out concepts so people can stop asking the question of, is that possible? And having people see something and react to it and say, that is good, or that is not good. So machine learning has many components. One is, we have the data. Is the data organized? Are the underlying data sources all stable and known and good? Another is, we have a machine learning model that is producing results, and the last is what this UI looks like and how it interacts with customers. But at any point, if you are not able to show people how it operates, you can get bound up in a lot of questions. And so we always make a commitment with the team to understand what we want these next unlocks to be, use our innovation budget to create something that people can react to. And so in the overall landscape of things, it puts a lot of pressure on these small teams to do a lot of things well. And if you're not set up for success in those regards, it's very hard to get from concept to production. And so the lessons of DeepBrew were put into place, and we proved the concept. Now, the really good news is that we made it to the end of this road. 1 billion recommendations per year. Each one of those served in sub 200 milliseconds. And interacting with customers in new ways. So live in 3,200 stores for digital drive-through, where we understand the context of a store. Each store at Starbucks now, due to machine learning, has a personality. The store has a store in Los Angeles will have a different profile from a store in Madison, Wisconsin. And we have notions of all the customers' experiences that are registered as what we call an SR member. So if you are engaged with us and you've given us permission, we'll know what your exact usual drink is on a Tuesday morning. We know what store you want to go to, and we're working on these frictionless ordering experiences that are designed to make it very easy for you to go to the app, say, you know me, I just want to get this coffee at the store I want, at the time I want, prepared in the exact way that I want. And we don't have drone delivery, but we do have Uber Eats, and we do have this entire ecosystem that is really changing the way that Starbucks is going to interact with customers in the future, and machine learning is at the heart of it. So we're very excited about the journey that we're on, and we're in a good position, but it's not an easy road to travel. And so I just wanted to share that experience with everybody and say that the more people that are successful in deploying machine learning models, the more people in our tribe, the better. So the idea here was to share this experience and let you guys ask questions and see if this resonates with you. So I'll open it up to questions.
Let's look at, I'm looking at the Q&A part, if any questions have come up on your area. Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to look for.
There's a question on the chat.
Yeah, oh, it's in the chat. Okay. Let me go to the chat. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You see it? Go to the chat and you'll see.
Yeah. I got it.
Okay.
DeepBrew have made a commitment. Yeah. What's true of Starbucks and maybe true of many other companies that are represented in these calls is that there are two very different ways of approaching projects. There's the standard waterfall, and there's Agile. And companies are built in different ways, and almost everybody in the world that I've talked to says Agile's the way to go, we'd love to do it. But in practice, people are much more comfortable with defaulting to waterfall. They will ask many questions. And these are all valid questions, and they represent a disconnect on certain Agile principles. If you ask all those questions up front, you will find yourself bound up in PowerPoints and discussions about what's possible and what's not possible. So what we did is we said, we're going to be Agile, and we are going to have a release every single month. It doesn't matter if it's a minor release or if it's a major release, but we are going to come out and we're going to have a relationship with the highest level stakeholders that we can get. Now, the CEO he likes it, but he's not in that group. But we have a set of sponsors where we have a release, and we defend it. We go in with the data that we have and we say, this is what we're working towards and we want your feedback. So we're always defending these Agile demonstrations as a way to prove a point. So we will not stop with demonstrations in the name of creating perfect. And that Paul talked about in his Amazon presentation. While people are more comfortable with Waterfall, and while people are more comfortable with perfect, there is this middle ground that Agile represents, which is, this is what we have, and this is what an MVP looks like. Now, I don't know if everybody's familiar, but there's different profiles for people's adoption of technology, crossing the chasm stuff, if everybody knows what that is. But inside of Starbucks, we had to find the people who were innovators and early adopters, and those are the people that get the Agile demonstrations. If we do not select the people correctly, and we have what's called late adopters, or people that are looking for perfect, they can bind up the innovation process very quickly by asking for things that make them comfortable, that will come in time, but they are not ready yet. And so when we say we're defending Agile via demonstrations, we mean selecting the right stakeholder group that understands that fundamental pipes need to be built and that data needs to be shaped. And we will have those presentations to them so they can get our backs, know what we're up to, and defend that to everybody else in the organization who says, machine learning, that's great. What is it again? How do we know the customer experience is going to be great? That's, it takes courage, political capital, and is a difficult thing at times. But if you build that discipline, you can move mountains. Does that answer your question, Stephen? And please, for everybody here, feel free to throw out questions or funny comments or jokes or whatever. We're active in the chat now. So, Stephen, does that answer your question?
Looks like it.
Cool.
Looks like it. You would have asked another question in the meanwhile if it was.
I'm not seeing the second.
Yeah, I don't see any more questions
Yeah,
yet.
was your software process for new features Agile
okay.
Waterfall? It's Agile. Let me make a distinction here. Whenever a new feature is requested, let me give you an example. We have a desire to add this new process called quick order. The quick order is a card that knows who you are, Stephen. And it knows what day you are logging in to your store. We want to build that feature, but we want to have an awareness of the overall waste profile for a store. So Starbucks, actually, we serve all sorts of food, all sorts of beverages. And at the end of the day, certain of those food products are going to be thrown out because they've expired or whatever. But you can imagine when you have 30,000 stores and you have all these customers, that the waste numbers can get very big very quickly. And so the request came down from the C-suite, hey, if you guys can build a brain, can you make it aware of how much food is being thrown out at the end of the day? And can you create a prediction algorithm that early in the day will know what's likely to be thrown out and make your recommendations to help get to an inventory zero position at the end of the day? That is an awesome application. It makes everybody's heart feel good. It makes partners feel good. If we can get to this inventory zero model, that'd be great. Now, there are a certain number of people where we said that needed a little bit more of a waterfall type description. So we basically prototype it out, but we won't spend a lot of time there that says, here's the data, here's the process, here's the release schedule, here's when we think we can get there, here's when we're going to do our proof of concepts for you along the way. We'll make a lightweight view of what the project looks like, but then the team will handle that in a very agile manner. We'll assign the tasks, we work out of Jira here, and we'll monitor everything where we're picking up cross-functionally all these tickets, and we'll build towards that with a known release date. So we will sort of combine these two things: lightweight, make everybody comfortable, but the dev team, is very agile in the way they approach things. That's a good point, Stephen. Modified waterfall. Waterfall is a lethal way to approach projects, in my view. They tend to take a long time to get organized. They tend to be run over time, and they tend to run over cost. And scope is a very hard thing to lock. So I would say it's not modified waterfall. We will avoid waterfall if it means that we need to organize for more time than it would take for us to build the first versions of it. So we're very much a building team. We're addicted to building. And so we will handle some level of communications, but we've built enough trust now with our team that we will build, show, and have people respond to it in order to cut off a lot of those conversations. And the platform's mature enough, and we know how to communicate with the real world enough that we've sort of built up the credibility that Agile actually works and they can trust us. But Agile versus Waterfall is very much like a trust issue. Yes. Yeah, so our model is not live yet. There's, yeah, I'm reading up on this. This model is actually super complex in many ways because we don't have great underlying data. I'll just say, one of the great things about being in the machine learning business is that when you start, you get the data that you get. And Starbucks has, it's just solid gold, the data that we get. It's pouring in every day. But when you get to a machine learning model and you're saying, I want to make the model smarter, I want to make this brain smarter. I don't know if everybody else has this experience, but we personified DeepBrew a little bit. We treat it like a hungry store manager that's brand new. And we're trying to pipe in what this new information is that it needs. We can now request from the organization, what is the new information that we need? Now, Starbucks tracks a lot of this information, but we need to have the information in a pipeline so we can feed it into our reward structure. And it's amazing. Now we can ask these questions. So in order for us to effectively implement that solution, we've requested that the organization supply new information, better information, so we can make better recommendations. So I can take no credit one way or the other on your holiday turkey sandwich, Stephen. I wish you better luck this holiday season. Yes, boy, that's a great question. So DeepBrew itself serves US, Canada, and Great Britain. But Starbucks actually has a model where all these other geos have their own setup. And so while there's a concept called the Artificial Intelligence Center of Excellence that I'm a part of it inside of Starbucks that works to give information to all the other geos, but DeepBrew has marching orders to solve the problem for the US first and foremost, just because it's a major market for us. And we have all the data under my control. I can talk to anybody that I want and have full command over the data. Looking for more questions.
Yeah, I'm also waiting and looking. You're answering all the good questions, all the questions. That's good. No more yet. Steven may come back with one more question potentially.
Let me ask people. I'm curious.
Yeah.
In a conference like this, there are a number of conversations about hyperparameter tuning and like a whole bunch of things that are very technical about the models, which are all valid questions. But those are, it's different from how do you actually implement and get, have success in production. So I do wonder, I would ask the folks here, do they have that same experience? Do people feel blocked on getting these models to come to life? Or do they find that tuning the model is actually the heart of the problem that they experience with machine learning? So if anybody wants to answer that question, I'm curious. That's my question to the group. No
Let's wait for them to type it in.
Cool. This is a quiet group.
No, not quite, but it takes time for them to type it in. There's one more coming in here. Tristan has a question.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, how are we building the platform? So the platform is let me try to answer this in 60 seconds. The key component of the platform is a way of work that's reproducible, a security review and a data use review that is global enough that we can take any data that we want. What would make it not a platform is if every time you built a model, you needed to get permission to use the data, review your security profile, and then implement the model. That is not scalable, extremely difficult, and it can take you a year to 18 months to get that from concept to actually live. It has all the same rules of deploying a new software solution in the real world, if you believe that 18 months is sort of the normal cycle time to go from concept to production. So the platform itself pre-approved at the highest levels of PII. So for whatever data is in there, it's not PCI, but it's PII, the highest restrictions on that. By creating access into the data lake and getting full permissions there, having a platform that has infrastructure that we control, so it's basically SQL, NoSQL, plus Docker, AKS, app services that speak JSON, plus edge protections that are known good, and communications to edges that know how to receive the JSON and do useful things with that JSON. So that platform is security plus all the ETL. So it's basically the lake, Databricks, ETL, workbooks, backend that's managed as sort of like as a service. Then we have Git and SonarQube CI/CD that allows people to, so the machine learning scientist, data scientists can implement in Git, write their code, and put it into, and then we have lower environments. So we create a safe space that takes all of those headaches off the plate of the machine learning engineers and the data scientists. Now we do have an orchestration layer. If somebody wants to build a Model 4 digital drive-through, one team can build one model, another team can build another model, or we can build variants. And we all are always running variants one against each other for each one of the user experiences. And that's what makes it a platform. Seeing if I answered that question. Jamie, if you have additional questions on that, let me know. So is it AML will bring great change to Starbucks? Satya Nadella agrees with you. That's what he was talking about at the Build conference. Will a security-first approach possibly slow down the Agile process? Is it discussed with investors? So is it discussed with investors? Yes. Kevin Johnson, CEO of Starbucks, has discussed this in multiple earnings calls with Wall Street. It's been mentioned in numerous articles, and analysts now respond to questions about Starbucks' future with machine learning and DeepBrew mentioned in their responses. Security first that's my primary job. And so the platform has an approved pattern. I do not need to go back to security every single time. Now I'm on a first name, talk whenever we want relationship with the security team, but we built that pattern with certain edge protections that were agreed to be scalable. So that takes security out of, we don't have to go back for security conversations every time. I will talk with the security team about the changing landscape of security. So when we think about AKS, we'll do a security review, but the data scientists are basically left out of that. Jamie, what are your views of a co-design of production systems with the AI models? Yes. Let's see. Yeah, we're heavily focused. There are two. I'm going to try to answer this super quickly. We're heavily into RL. Like DeepBrew, we love RL in two flavors: Thompson sampling and DQN. And so we're extremely proud of this DQN. It's pretty sweet piece of technology. It's a sweet approach to this. And there's no better feeling than seeing, if you personify it a little bit, your DQN's like a child and you want to see how it does in the real world. But there's no feeling, and I hope everybody here sees this, is when your KPIs start going up, 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 and you know that the model is learning. It's really an exciting moment. But we do not, like there's this concept of co-design, and this is a deep topic. We tend to not like to work with too many groups. We like to have the notion of it's a very small team with a person who's responsible for understanding exactly what's happening inside of the model. So we like small teams and we like single people who can answer questions. There are other elements of it, but we try to draw the boundary around this with, we handle all the data, we handle the inputs and the outputs, and the outputs is all JSON, and then there's a different like a design team that handles how that's presented at the edge. Let's see.
There's a question in Q&A by Mohan Raj.
Do you want to read that one?
Yeah, I understand you're using Azure. Do you use Azure ML or custom built on top of Azure infrastructure?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have, I love Microsoft. I love everything that they've done for us. In my strict marching orders, because Satya Nadella is on the board of Starbucks, was build everything in Azure. And so we have reviewed a number of their approaches, and they do have some very interesting things that we may leverage. However, we have not used their models, and we have not used their tools perhaps as much as we need, that we potentially could have, for two reasons. One is, we view the ML models that we have and the changes in customer behaviors that are moving up and to the right as solid gold strategic assets that only Starbucks should own. And so we want to build that expertise with the models and the data in the pipeline, everything that's inside of DeepBrew. We view it as an enormous competitive advantage, and we want to have that expertise and own that expertise. And so we have built Python models, Java models, and we own all the IP around those. At some point in the future, that may change. And there are certain use cases that may change. But when it comes to like a DQN, knowing all the states, knowing all the transitions, it's the new strategic advantage. And we want to protect that and have it for ourselves. Business problems directly through DeepBrew. Really quickly, super fun ones that everybody can probably relate to. If you have ever driven by Starbucks and you see a long line of cars, especially in COVID, I drive by malls nowadays and I'll see the mall looks like a ghost town, except one place has a huge line of cars, and it's often a Starbucks, and I just feel like that's fantastic. But that's a problem that machine learning is trying to deal with. How do you make it so that queue length is shorter? So we own screen real estate that can determine what a queue length is and recommend products in the digital drive-thru that are faster to prepare when the line is long. We want as many customers as happy as possible with the least amount of friction. And so we're actively involved in all of these customer experiences, trying to reduce the friction. So if you walk into a Starbucks and you see something that causes you to pause and say, I don't want to wait, or why isn't this person giving me the attention, or why isn't this as warm as it should be, or why isn't this ready at the right time? These are all problems that are now coming into this brain of ML. So there's a wide variety of things that we're trying to address. Now, I have heard, there are a whole bunch of things. the world is changing so quickly. That landscape that I showed, each one of those boxes, each one of those is moving quickly. So operations, there's all these advances on all fronts. So you've got to love multitasking and like juggling and knowing how to say no to features that range from security operations to all these ways to simplify the creation of ML models. But there are a bunch of things that are really cool that we do see coming out of the pipeline for Amazon, not Amazon, but for Azure. We will evaluate those in turn. Yeah, I think my experience is, Jamie's point is everybody ends up rolling out their own. That's pretty consistent with our experience, is that maybe the world overpromises on some of these out-of-the-box solutions. And if you really want to tune it, you might run into a barrier at some point where you're like, well, I really want the freedom to do X, Y, and Z. And we moved through a number of those. Believe me, we would have loved to have used other people's solutions. We would have loved to leverage all the ways that people said make this easy. But we routinely run into a very real gap. It's just the way the world works, is that when you trade having somebody else do that work, you lose flexibility. So in order for them to scale, they've actually had to sort of draw a line around what's possible. But if you're trying to build something that's a strategic advantage, you might want to include some very creative things, new data sources, new transformations, new ways to approach your DQ. And there's certain things that other people can't do. And we just got ourselves to a point where we said those tools will not suffice as they exist today. Are there other questions that I missed?
Yes, Brian, Stephen is asking in Q&A, could you discuss the Starbucks Spotify partnership? How does it improve customer experience or revenue or personalization, or give you richer data on customers?
That is awesome. I don't actually work much with the Starbucks Spotify partnership. Starbucks is such a wonderful, many moving parts company where they're innovating on all these fronts. And there is this desire at some point to unify everything that would make a customer's life better if we knew. But that's in a different silo at Starbucks. And we're very aware. This is a meta trend that is especially true at Starbucks. There are two things that I will not do. One is take customer data that they haven't granted us permission specifically to use. And two, work with video. Because we have a brand promise that says Starbucks is going to be a place where everybody feels welcome and comfortable, and it's like their third place. There's home, there's work, there's Starbucks, a place that you can hang out and feel like that's a place for you to decompress and feel great. Enjoy a cup of coffee, hang out with friends, whatever it is. Or in the COVID world, drive up there, get a wonderful cup of coffee and just feel like the world's normal for a few minutes. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that and experienced it myself. There's just an enormous sense of normalcy in going to Starbucks and getting a treat. But what we don't want to do is ever make it feel like we're treating that customer as if all that data belongs to us and they're a product. We don't want that experience. And so Spotify at some point might be useful data, but I don't touch that at all. And video, I don't want to have anything to do with it because a customer shouldn't feel like, even if they haven't signed in or opted in or opted out, that they're being observed. The company can make a decision about how they want to handle that, but the brand promise is more important than all the data that we can synthesize. And so there is tension inside the organization and in the industry in general, and everybody here probably knows it. There's an entire ecosystem of data internal to a company, but external to the data, where we can stitch together things and we can know incredible things. It's just incredible. But we try to draw that line very carefully because we have a promise that we want to keep. And it's more important than feeding the data to the machine.
Brian?
Great question. Yeah.
I think the time is up, and we have some announcement that we have to do for the upcoming pitch competition.